Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Michigan International Speedway. She's the fastest 2-mile track that we go to, and it's in the lovely, beautiful Irish Hills of Brooklyn, Michigan. This weekend, the drivers brought their best, their fastest speed to this fast track with a lot of side-by-side action, comers and goers, interesting strategy, and another shakeup in the playoff grade with our 15th different winner who knows his way around this racetrack. And he's been known to close races in the past. Let's get into it all. Number 1, Kevin Harvick, the closer. That's right. For the first time since 2020, can't believe I'm saying that, Kevin Harvick gets his first win of the season, winning yesterday's FireKeepers Casino 400, going from outside the playoff grid to now back into the playoffs as he breaks his 65-race winless streak, winning over Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and Ryan Blaney. Kevin Harvick entering this race, again, needed to win this race because he was multiple points. He was at least a good race and a half outside the playoff grid as far as where they were in points compared to the guys that were in front of them in the regular season standings that had not yet accumulated a win. Well, yesterday, Kevin Harvick came in knowing that this was more than likely his best opportunity to win a race to make the playoffs, because in the past, he's been very good at Michigan. His first Cup win at this track came in 2010 when driving for Richard Racing. Then he won here in 2018 in the summer of August. He won in 2019 in the summer of August and had a very special moment with his son Keelan in that race where after he won, he brought Keelan out to get the checkered flag and he let him ride in the car all the way to victory lane, which is just a little bit on the front stretch. He just let him take in this nice moment, a nice father-son bonding moment, then swept both of the races that were run on the same weekend during the COVID year in 2020. And then yesterday, he capitalized and got his ticket to the playoffs with this win and had a very special moment with his daughter, Piper, at the very end, where she got to wave the checkered flag and she got to ride in the car with Daddy. That's a very nice father-daughter bonding moment. It's just warms your heart to see that. But yesterday, in general, Kevin Harvick, he had a really good race car. I mean, the last couple of weeks, the Ford team has actually had good race cars. They just haven't been able to put it together. There were some races where they could have run well and maybe could have won, like Loudon, for example, but they lost their track position. They were good at Pocono, but they were caught up in the Denny Hamlin-Ross Chastain wreck, which they never should have been a part of. They were an innocent victim. Last week they had a chance at top 10, but they were caught up in a wreck, and he retaliated against Alex Bowman, who really wasn't the guy that wrecked him in the first place. Yesterday, he kept up with the racetrack the entire time and ran with the fastest cars, particularly those Toyotas. He stayed with them all day, and when he was finished his last stop of the day, the caution came out when Ross Chastain got, had contact with Christopher Bell on the front stretch. Bell tried to cover up and block Chastain, but he timed it wrong. So any people that want to blame Chastain don't. It wasn't his fault. It was Bell's. When that happened, the car slowed down, and Kevin Harvick had already gotten out of the pit lane at that time. He made his stop, and he stayed on the lead lap. So everyone else who had yet to make their pit stop came in under yellow and came out right behind Kevin Harvick for the final restart. And when that restart happened, Harvick took off like he was Speed Racer with Bullet Bill on his car. He just drove away, never looked back. He had at least a 4-second lead over second place by the time he crossed that start-finish line. Although there were times when Bubba Wallace was trying to reel in Kevin Harvick, he just wasn't able to close in fast enough. He was hung for a while behind the 22 car, but Harvick drove away, even with a close call at the very end where Daniel Suarez cut a left front tire, but he made it to the pits, didn't bring out debris. NASCAR let him run, which I thought was the right call. And Kevin Harvick is now back in victory lane, and he's now back in the playoffs. Now he might not have a lot of bonus points. He only has 5 bonus points, which was courtesy of that win. But don't doubt Kevin Harvick. As a matter of fact, in his post-race interview, he said, "Everybody doubted us. I never did." And he and Rodney Childers have been a good combo for a long time. They won a championship their first time together with Stewart-Haas Racing, and now they're back in the playoffs, and I think they could be a real contender to make a deep run and maybe make it to Phoenix. Whereas we all know in the past, even though he hadn't won there since 2018, Kevin Harvick has a knack for running well and being dominant at Phoenix International Raceway. So there's some optimism now for this Ford team. Now that they're in, they could be a dangerous threat. But congrats to Kevin Harvick and the Ford team on an amazing win, and just a lovely, again, father-daughter moment at the end with Kevin and his daughter Piper. Number 2, the Toyotas were so fast, but they didn't come up in the very end. Bubba Wallace had a career weekend, finishing runner-up, but he started the weekend by having a fast car in practice and went out and won his first career Cup pole. on Saturday's qualifying session. And when the green flag dropped yesterday, that car was fast. I'm not joking. He literally had the speed in that race car. When they dropped the green, he held out for the first 20 laps before the competition caution, but he stayed up there for the most part. He kept up with the racetrack and with his Toyota counterparts the entire day. Now, pit crew didn't cost him at all, which it's been known to cost him some races in the past and a chance at a good run, but he had a good race car yesterday. He just made some mistakes, and he was pretty upset in his post-race interviews thing, and there's a lot of things going through my head about what I could have done in that final restart, because he was lined up next to Kevin Harvick on the front row for the final restart, but he just didn't capitalize, and he got by the 22. I'm thinking, okay, now we're going to see what Bubba's made of. Can he run down Kevin Harvick? Never really was able to. The most he could get was within 4 to 3.8 seconds at the very end, but it was just, it was a good effort by the 23 team and Bubba himself. I know he's pretty upset about, coming up short, and he said, I'm disappointing my team. This was a great opportunity for us. There's still 3 more races to go, Bubba, and one of them is one of your better tracks, Daytona. So keep your head high and be positive. You still have an opportunity. But look where the 23 team is right now versus where they were early June. At the beginning of the year, finished second in the Daytona 500. Then ever since then, it's been bad luck, not really a lot of fast race cars, and the pit crew constantly letting him down. Think back to Kansas. Had a potential top 5 car. Pit crew had multiple mistakes in that race. He was able to get back to finish 10th. Nashville had a top 10 car, maybe a top 5 car, we'll never know, because once again, the pit crew cost him. So they went and swapped with the 20 team of Christopher Bell, some of their pit crew members. It's benefited both sides. Christopher Bell obviously got the win at Loudon, but Bubba Wallace, ever since that 3rd place finish at Loudon, they have not had a single bad run. They have finished in the top 10 ever since. They had a 3rd again at Loudon. They had a top 10 at Pocono, and they had a top 5 at Indianapolis Road Course last week. And Bubba's not really been known for being a good road course racer. And this weekend, they had the speed in the car. He went on his first pole and had a great run. There's optimism for that 23 team. They just got to put it together, and they've got to get to victory lane. But the speed was there, and Bubba should hold his head high. They had a good weekend this weekend. As for his car owner, Denny Hamlin, he had arguably the best car. He was so fast at the beginning of the race. He was so strong. He won stage 2, and I felt like this guy's going to be untouchable. Nobody could touch him. But like Bubba Wallace, pit road has been Denny Hamlin's Achilles heel. And we saw it yesterday where he had a speeding penalty actually in the middle part of the race. He had to restart the tail of the field, but worked his way back up to the front and won that stage. Then in the final stage, on that pit stop, the final pit stop, there was too many men over the wall. So Denny Hamlin had to restart the tail end. Guess what? He passed all those guys and got back up to 3rd place. Showed you how strong he was. If he hadn't had that pit penalty at the very end, I don't think we would have been talking about Kevin Harvick winning. We would have been talking about Denny Hamlin getting his 3rd win of the season. But with this 11 car, how many more pit road penalties can you have in a season? Not just this year. Look at the past few years. Denny Hamlin, it seems like every single race I hear, pit road penalty, Denny Hamlin. Didn't get the lug nut tight. Too fast on pit road, entering or exiting. You left the gas can as you were leaving the pit lane. You left the jack as you were leaving the pit lane. You had too many men over the wall. A crew member over the wall too soon. How many more times are you going to continue to have pit penalties like this and prevent yourselves from having an opportunity to try to win some races and build on bonus points? I know he has the 2 wins, but Denny Hamlin only has 6 top 10s this year. He's, in my opinion, not a championship contender in these playoffs if you keep making these mistakes. They've had the cars, they've had the speed, they just haven't had the luck and the results to go with. Oh, yesterday, getting back from the pit penalty to get a top 5 was impressive. But what could have been? You could have won the race. They've got to limit the mistakes. They've got to get their act together because come playoffs, you don't want to make mistakes. Because if you find yourself out going into one of the cutoff races and you have a problem, you're done. So they've got to limit those mistakes. But despite the speed with those Toyota cars of Bubba and Denny yesterday, it just wasn't enough in the very end. Number 3, the playoff bubble. With the Kevin Harvick win, the bubble has now shifted to 15 different winners locked in. The final spot is one driver on points, and that's Ryan Blaney holding a 19-point lead over Martin Truex Jr. for the final spot. Before we get into where they stand the next couple races, both of them had good runs yesterday, considering where they were at the beginning. Truex, he ran top 10, top 15 all day. Then he surfaced in the top 5 late, finished 6th. Ryan Blaney at the beginning of the race was nowhere near the top 10. He was way back there with Chase Elliott and Brad Keselowski and Alex Bowman for the most part, but then got track position late as they kept up with the racetrack as they continued to cool down, and they got track position, they kept up with adjustments. They had speed in their car at the very end. Was it enough if they couldn't gotten by the 22 and the 23 to run down Kevin? Probably not, but they had a good run yesterday and capitalized on what was at the beginning looked like a lost race for them. But at the end of the day, Ryan Blaney now a 19-point cushion over Martin Truex Jr. So with 3 races to go, these two could possibly find themselves, one of them could be in, one of them could be out, or both of them could win and jump back into the playoffs. Or both of them could be out by the time the checkered flag waves at Daytona. We don't know what's going to happen. But looking at these next few races, these next couple of tracks favor Martin Truex Jr. more so than Ryan Blaney. Why? What's next weekend? Richmond. Who's good there? Martin Truex Jr. He had the speed early in the spring to win that race, but he was on a different tire strategy, and Denny Hamlin ended up beating him at the end. What has been Ryan Blaney's Achilles heel in the NASCAR schedule? Richmond. Now, early in the spring, he won the pole. He had a good race car, and he actually finished 7th. That's his second top 10 of that track, or his first. I'd have to go back and look at that. But Ryan Blaney in the past there has not run well whatsoever, and that concerns Ryan Blaney fans quite a lot right now. If you're a Martin Truex Jr. fan, you're optimistic, and you feel confident that you can go to Richmond. Even the following weekend, Watkins Glen, Martin Truex Jr.'s won there before, and he's run well there. Ryan Blaney, he's a good road course racer, but don't necessarily see him a lot at the front of Watkins Glen too much. But when we go to Daytona, Ryan Blaney, I trust way more than Martin Truex Jr. because Blaney's just such a good super speedway racer. Could have won the Daytona 500 early this year. Looking back, they're going to wonder if we missed the playoffs, we could have won the 500 and we wouldn't have been in this position. But these two are going to be in a dogfight the next few weeks to try to battle for that final spot in points, unless if one of them wins or if both of them wins, they come back into the playoffs. And if we have more than 16 different winners, the guy that's going to be left out is the guy that's still yet to come back from his concussion, Kurt Busch. So we'll see what happens the next few weeks, but it was a good run by both these guys, but now they're in a dogfight as the playoff bubble took a turn with the win from Kevin Harvick. Number 4, big wreck at the beginning of the race in stage 1, taking out key contenders. So after the competition caution, because early on we had rain, we delayed it for about an hour or so, then we got going, we got the whole race in, by the way. When we had the competition caution, a couple cars pitted, including Kyle Busch, who, like the Toyota cars at the beginning of that race, he was fast. And he needed a good run, considering the last couple weeks have not been good to Kyle Busch whatsoever. They have not had a lot of solid luck. They haven't had a top 10 really since the Coke 600. They haven't finished in the top 10 since May. That's crazy. I can't believe that. Well, on the race start, they restarted in the middle of the pack, and a couple rows in front of them, some cars stayed out. Among them was Rick Ware Racing's J.J. Yaley. He got put in the middle and slipped back and made contact with Michael McDowell, turning him into the pack and collecting Kyle Busch. Austin Cindric took a wicked hit of the front end, but thankfully it was okay. Eric Almirola, who's in his final year and probably isn't going to make the playoffs unless he wins, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Harrison Burton, and Todd Gilliland. That was a pretty unfortunate wreck, and I say to JJ Yeley, what are you doing staying out when you're one of the slowest cars that stayed out, and there's a lot of guys behind you that are faster than you, and they have fresher tires? Why don't you restart the tail along the line? You're not going to be able to compete with the big boys, especially on these restarts. Now, late in the race, if you were to stay out, I could see that. But early in the race, no. He should have dropped at the tail end of the field, but he didn't. He wrecked all those cars. He wrecked himself. And Kyle Busch was left pretty frustrated. And he was asked by Kim Kuhn from NBC on a scale of 1 to 10 how disappointing these last few races been. He said, on a scale of 1 to 10, infinity. He's not happy. And remember, Kyle Busch still has not negotiated a contract with Joe Gibbs Racing to be back with them next year or in the near future. So we don't know where Kyle Busch is going to end up. Could he be with Joe Gibbs Racing? Could he maybe go to Stewart-Haas Racing and replace Eric Almirola when he retires this year, or if he retires? They've got to get some luck back in that 18 car. Richmond this upcoming week could be a good place because he's been known to run well there in the past. He's won there before. The last time he won there was in 2018. Both races, by the way. So maybe next weekend is the week they turn around and get momentum back and maybe build back those contract talks to stay with JGR. But what could have been for Kyle Busch, because he had the speed in that car early on yesterday. If he had kept up with the track and not had been in that wreck and stayed up with those guys, he could have possibly won that race as well. But we'll never know because of shenanigans on that restart and a big wreck that took out quite a few contenders. And number 5, the racing product at Michigan. So early in the year, we ran at the other 2-mile track, Auto Club Speedway, or Fontana Speedway, whatever you want to call it. One of the best races at that track I've seen in years. Years. Probably since 2014. That race in the spring was phenomenal. Side-by-side action, a lot of passing, a lot of tire fall off, good action all around, and especially those restarts are so much fun. Same goes for Michigan. The restarts there are fun, and it's a really fast racetrack. The big question is, with this car, will we see a lot more like a drafting thing like Daytona Talladega, or will we see in Atlanta, or will we see side-by-side action and a lot of tire fall off and guys losing control of their cars and differing strategies in the race? We saw a lot of that yesterday. In my opinion, that was one of the best Michigan races I've seen since both races in 2014, and even the 2012 first race since the track got repaid, the one where Dale Jr. broke his winless streak. This was one of the best races I've seen in years. There was so many competitors, a lot of comers and goers throughout the race, differing tire strategies between both of the stages, between guys winning track position or stage points. A lot of action all around. I mean, of course, that big wreck early on. Again, a lot of comers and goers. And then guys servicing up at the end. The playoff guys. The guys are trying to battle to get in the playoffs. We saw them up at the front at the very end. That made it even more entertaining. This was a really good Michigan race. Now, was it better than the Auto Club race this year? No. The Auto Club race was way better. That was a great race. But this one still, a very entertaining race. The best Michigan race, like I've said, in years. So, round of applause to all the boys that put on a great show yesterday at Michigan International Speedway. So now with that in the books, let's move on to Richmond Raceway. With 3 races to go, the playoff bubble continuing to tense up because now with 15 different winners, we have 1 spot left to get in the playoffs. It's currently being held by a guy who's in on points right now. Can Martin Truex Jr. outpoint Ryan Blaney, or maybe punch his ticket to the playoffs with a win next week at Richmond, a track where he's won at before? Or will Ryan Blaney maybe somehow take that good run they had in the spring and carry it over to this race? Or with Kevin Harvick, now as a winner in 2022, can he get another win and get more confidence and carry momentum towards the playoffs of that 4 team? Or could Kyle Busch get momentum back on his side? There's a lot of questions. We'll answer them next weekend. I'm looking forward to the 3/4 mile track being entertaining with a lot of slipping and sliding and tire fall off. So looking forward to it. Y'all have a wonderful week. Subscribe, like, and once again, congrats to Kevin Harvick and Stewart-Haas Racing on their amazing win yesterday. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!